Well, they all said the Tesla Model 2 would never be built. I said it would. They all said it would never be £30,000. I said it would be far less. The Tesla Model 2 is now on its way. It's no longer a myth. In fact, it's a fact. It's already been seen out on the roads in Texas being filmed. So let's have a look at those facts. I'm Dave. This is Dave Takes It On. Now, just slightly aside, I recently watched a video from a year or so ago of an interview with a man standing in front of a Cybertruck. It was out on the roads of California, getting in some mileage and load of publicity. It was like a swarm of bees round a honeypot. I don't know how much adverts cost in the US, but this is an advert. As an advert, it's absolutely priceless. And there was this man standing in front of it, looking at it, being asked about it, and he said, "It's never going to be built." This must be like taking a flat earther and flying them on a rocket up into space, being told to look out the window. Absolutely priceless. But my viewers also know that the same person in space would be claiming, oh, it's Photoshop or simulators or I've been hypnotized or, yeah, there's a load of excuses they come out with. Not one of them would be to say, yes, it's here, it's happened. Well, if you check back on my videos, you'll find I said that the Model 2 will be built sooner or later, and that the timescale would be dictated by the success or failure of the Model Y refresh launch. That's now underway. I said if they didn't get enough demand, then the Model 2 would be brought forward very quickly and launched. But if the Model Y refresh sales went really well, we wouldn't see it until they did eventually begin to die down. And that could be 1, 2 or 3 years from now. I also argued about if they would launch it because of the imminent arrival of the Robo Taxi, which is now here. My predictions were actually spot on, but for different reasons. You see, the Model Y refresh sales are remarkably strong. Those figures are starting to come through as deliveries happen. Model Y is still the best-selling EV in Europe as I make this video. Now, when the Model 2 was being designed and planned, the world was in a much better place from an automotive point of view. ICE sales were somewhat strong, although well below what was hoped for. EV sales were growing nicely and the Model Y was about to come, the original Model Y, the best-selling car in the world. Everything looked incredibly rosy. Then the rot set in. The half-hearted efforts of the legacy auto to make a decent EV, combined with their massive, negatively slanted campaign designed to discredit EVs in a failed attempt to protect their ICE sales, combined to work and EV sales slowed dramatically. Talk about karma. While they had hoped just to stop EVs from taking over, they actually succeeded in starting the journey towards their own destruction of the ICE cars they were relying on. Over the next year, traditional ICE industry accelerated towards its eventual failure. At the same time, the EV industry that they'd hoped to stop showed a dramatic slowdown compared to where it had been heading, but it was still growing at a very healthy pace. A bit like turkeys voting for Christmas. Yeah, and then Trump got in and just about finished the American auto industry, both ICE and EV. He's well on his way to destroying the traditional auto industries around the world and eventually probably the entire world economy as well. Now, the net result of all that is the world is indeed very different to when the Model 2 was planned. As an investor, a small shareholder, I had hoped the Model 2 would not be needed. Certainly not needed at the moment, while the Model 3 and the Model Y sales continued unabated, selling all they could make, because these have a much higher profit margin than the Model 2. Well, the actual result is the Model Y is still the best-selling EV in Europe, followed closely by the Model 3. But overall, sales are down below what they wanted, what they predicted. The reason I knew it would be built is just pure business sense. While Citroën, Renault, Vauxhall, Hyundai, Nissan, they can all make these really small budget EVs, they've got virtually zero chance of making one profitably. Most legacy auto still to this day do not yet make a profit on any of their EVs versus the cost of production, COP. This means most make a loss, small or large, on each and every EV sale. Some are now just starting to become profitable versus the cost of production, meaning they do now make a small profit per EV. But not one has recovered their setup costs to make the business profitable overall. Most are incredibly heavy in debt, to the tune of multi-billions of dollars in factories that today are either not yet finished or not yet operating at a level of productivity that makes financial sense. Chinese are the same. Most not yet fully profitable. They're heading that way. And even BYD is reporting some very dubious figures about their profitability. Well, there is no doubt that as it stands at the moment, the only EV manufacturer making a healthy, consistent profit is Tesla. And their profit is both per unit and overall. Each car makes a genuine healthy profit, that's the envy of the auto world, on each unit, but Tesla is also the only top 100 capex value companies in the world to be completely debt-free, meaning the profit it has already previously made has paid back all the startup loans, factories and everything else, and it means the latest gigafactories, they're built largely on cash. It's amazing. So if anyone in the whole world can make a budget EV for around £25,000 or dollars, then it would have to be and can only be Tesla. The only company in the world that could make a profit making them is Tesla. The factory manufacturing production costs are already paid back. So the very first Model 2 to roll off the production line is likely to be near profitable already. And we saw this with the Cybertruck of all beasts. That was reported to have hit profitability in the first year. It's unheard of in the car industry. But there was no reason to stop or reduce production of the Model Y and the Model 3 in order to make the less profitable budget EV. World events have now changed all that. Car sales are down. People are not buying as many, certainly not as many new cars. Petrol, diesel, hydrogen, PHEV, hybrid or BEV, they're all just down, full stop. And if Y and 3 sales are down, below expectations, that now gives them spare capacity in their factories, their gigafactories. They do not need to reduce production to make way for the Model 2. That capacity is already sitting there waiting. Now, events have proved my prediction correct, but for a very different reason. I said they would launch Model 2 when sales of Model 3 and Y start falling. In fact, those sales are now growing, but unlikely to even reach the levels they previously predicted. So where does all this leave the Robo Taxi? Well, great question. It leaves it also with spare manufacturing capacity. Beijing, Texas, Berlin, gigafactories all already have massive expansion plans. Now that expansion will still be needed, but for a different reason. And in an amazing twist of fate, it now makes the robo-taxi much more important and therefore profitable than ever. You see, if many people have stopped buying cars of any sort due to finances, credit rating, recession, inflation, or whatever it is they mention, then some of them are just going to hang on to their old cars for longer. That could lead to higher demand for robo-taxis as these older cars start requiring more and more expensive maintenance and repairs. And as they fail more often, let's just get a taxi. If they can't afford the new car, many will instead say, let's use these robo-taxis if they're cheap enough. And the robo-taxis are now already on the street. But robo-taxis present a chicken and egg dilemma. If you start a robo-taxi service, but you only have a few thousand vehicles, customers are likely to face long delays on the app and frequent non-available messages when they try to book one. Nor can they just stop all the factories and make millions of robo-taxis, stop making the 3, the Y, the S and the X and the Cybertruck. Those sales and unit profit give them the profit and revenue to do all they've planned to do, part one of which is robo-taxis. And there's much more in the pipeline we don't yet know about. All that costs money, so they need the revenue from the sales. So the ideal solution, which Tesla has and none of the others have, is to just keep making their most popular models. Well, let me explain. If you look at Waymo, they only use Jaguar I-Pace EVs. In fact, with their setup, they only can use Jaguars. To change to another vehicle at this stage would involve massive reset of all sorts of things. Well, now Jaguar's discontinued making them, so Waymo's had to buy up the old production lines and begin to make them themselves. That is where they are, And their target by the end of 2026 is to have made a total of 1,200 new Jaguar I-Paces. But each one costs an absolute fortune. Not only are they virtually handmade now, but once completed, they need to be fitted out with the radar, the LiDAR, the ultrasonics, cameras, a whole load of gubbins. They themselves reckon each one's about $200,000 minimum to get on the road. So if all goes well, Waymo could have an additional 1,200 cars to add to their fleet of about 1,500 existing ones, already working away, providing 250,000 fully autonomous rides per week. Now, hats off to Waymo. That's an impressive total, with each taxi handling up to about 20 rides a day. That's great. But it's in a tiny area. And it's heavily, regularly geolocated. See, these cars can only go on set routes that have been pre-planned and pre-surveyed. Passengers are not able to select a location outside of these fairly small areas within just 4 cities in the whole of the US of A. If it's not pre-mapped, you can't go there. One alternative would be to buy up all the I-Paces in the world, but even that's only about 65,000 vehicles worldwide, and each would then need a massive refurbishment to add all the sensors and other taxi-like equipment. Hardly practical. Tesla, on the other hand, does not pre-map their operating areas. They use vision only, where the computer learns to drive by watching videos showing millions of Tesla EVs all around the world, covering billions of miles, driven by motorists. They can and do go anywhere they choose. Anywhere a human driver can go, a fully autonomous Tesla Robo Taxi can also go. But the first key advantage is the fact that every single Robo Taxi will cost approximately a tenth of the price to make. It will come out the factory with all the sensors it already will ever need, and the software written in-house already installed, written by Tesla, so no cost, no licenses. Now that is huge, but not as huge as the existing Tesla fleet. Almost every Tesla ever made also has all the sensors it needs and the software it needs. In fact, almost every Tesla EV on the road is effectively already a robotaxi. It's just that the owners don't know it and can continue to drive it manually. And there's considerably more than 5 million of them on the road, already fully equipped to make it a robotaxi and add it to their fleet. See, imagine you bought your Tesla a few years ago, you paid off your loan, your lease and bought it at the end of it. You then get an email from Elon saying, look, would you like to make some money? Allow us to take control of your Tesla when you're not using it, and we will use it as a robotaxi. You tell us the hours we can have it for, then you just sit back. When you don't need it, we'll allocate it to a customer, and it'll just set off, pick them up, drop them off, continue doing that for the duration you have specified. It will finally be cleaned, checked for damage, topped up on the battery, driven back to your home, ready for when you do actually need it. And then a short while later, you'll get paid for the journeys it did. Now, that's got to be attractive to some people, but it means even if only 10% of its existing owners are interested, 10% who don't use the car for most of the day, Tesla will have on day one over 500,000 EVs fully equipped as robo-taxis, no more chicken and egg. At virtually no upfront cost, Tesla can have a very sizable fleet on the road on day one on the launch. Tesla is no longer in a mad rush to turn all the factories into robo-taxi production. Anyway, back to the Model 2. With the spare capacity available, Model 2 can now be made without having much effect on other sales and without really seriously indenting into robotaxis. So there's no reason now not to launch it. And a Tesla going on sale at $25,000, that's pretty much guaranteed to be an absolutely massive world-beating bestseller. But is it going to be $25,000? My answer is, why not? It will be a much smaller vehicle. The Model Y is actually a very big car. Even the Model 3 is also a very good size. It's longer than a BMW 3 Series, and that itself is not recognised as being a small car. It's also expensive at £40,000 plus. That's way beyond the range of the best-selling car in the UK, the Ford Puma, which is about £29,000. Now, with the Model 2, all the luxuries will have been stripped out and the battery size will be far less. It'll still be good compared to others, just not spectacular any longer. Model Y and Model 3 are already being built in a very different, tremendously cost-effective manner to almost any other car in the whole of the motoring world. The Model 2, they've set up the factory that will already surpass that by a very long way. Smaller battery, far less luxuries, like, do you really need a rear screen in the back for the kids playing all the games, or 16 premium speaker stereo? Model Y is now calculated costing less than $30,000 to make. Model 2 could easily get down to nearly $20,000. That would make a $25,000 selling price realistic. Now, I've seen estimates as low as $18,000. It's not clickbait. That is accurate, but that does include the $7,500 IRA tax credit, which would then put it up to $25,000. So here in the UK, we do get dearer new cars than any other country, but even here, car prices are pretty much pound to dollar. So Model 3 long-range rear-wheel drive is £45,000 here. In the States, it's $43,000 plus local taxes. They're fairly comparable. So I would expect to see the Model 2 launch later this summer. Supplies start reaching us later this year. I do expect the price to be very much closer to $25,000 than $30,000. I expect it to be a really good, decent small car with a good range and good performance. Definitely far superior to most other EVs at that same price point. Plus, the Tesla software is second to none and the envy of the motoring world, and you get the staggeringly cheap and massive Tesla supercharger network. Now, in addition, I would not be surprised if many of the features were included but concealed. They've done this before. For example, they could offer paid performance upgrades at a later date, as they've done on many of the models. Thus, with the absolute deluge of over-the-air updates, we all get these. Mine's 9 years old. I still get them. These budget cars would get better every year. Mine has. Mine is a much better car now than when it was brand new. Well, I'm sure you all have your own ideas about Model 2, Robo Taxis. So, as always, leave your comments down below. We love reading through them, and we do feature some of them in some of our videos. So thanks very much for watching. I'm Dave. If you have enjoyed it, click the like button. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe, hit the notification bell. And please, big thank you to our Patreon members and our YouTube members. Thanks for watching. I'm Dave.